I disappeared without telling anyone. At first, no one cared. Everyone thought I was merely acting on a whim, and that I would return before long. But one day passed, then 2, then 3. A month went by, and I still never appeared again. I had thought I could live quietly on my own, until a teacher from school called. Only then did the Carter family realize I had not been home in a long time. My dad, Richard Carter, flew into a rage. I only refused to buy him a cake. Was that really enough for him to stop coming home? Could it be that he does not even have enough money to buy himself a cake? Have we ever shortchanged him on allowance all these years? My mom, Claire Carter, sighed. That boy is far too immature. He takes money from the family, and who knows what he spends it on. Then Claire asked Richard, how much allowance do you give him every month? I would like to ask him myself why he could not simply buy the cake. Richard looked confused by the question. He is so disobedient. I hardly ever give him an allowance. Then he added, even if I never gave him any, the allowance you gave him should have been more than enough. Claire froze. I never gave him an allowance either. Before she could finish speaking, the two of them suddenly looked at each other and asked in unison, you never gave him an allowance. Neither of them could believe it. The allowance they gave Ryan came to tens of thousands every month, and his 3 older sisters gave him money from time to time as well. He had never once needed to worry about money. Whenever there was a holiday or birthday, they gave him even more. But it seemed they had never given me any money at all. My dad, Richard, summoned the housekeeper and asked where Ethan's room was. The housekeeper looked surprised. This entire family did not even know where their own biological son's room was. But, as the Carter family's housekeeper, she knew better than to ask questions or speak out of turn. She respectfully led them through the house. Mr. and Mrs. Carter, and the 3 young ladies, please follow me. The housekeeper led them past one room after another, turning left and right, until she finally stopped. In front of a tiny storage room tucked into a corner, Mr. and Mrs. Carter, and the 3 young ladies. This is young Master Ethan's room. Under everyone's puzzled gaze, the housekeeper pushed the door open. The entire tiny room was laid bare before them. Everyone stared in shock at the pitifully cramped space. The words, storage room, were still posted on the door. Ethan, how could he be living here? Claire asked in disbelief. Richard's brow knotted tightly. He turned to the housekeeper and demanded, what is going on? Why is Ethan living in a storage room? The housekeeper sighed inwardly. Then she answered honestly, Sir, young Master Ethan moved into this storage room when he was 8. He has lived here ever since. For 8 whole years. Truthfully, this tiny storage room was even smaller than her own room, and there was hardly anything inside. The Carters were an extremely wealthy family, yet their true heir lived in a room this small, while the adopted son occupied the large bedroom that had once been his, spent the money that should have belonged to him, and enjoyed the love of the entire family. Even the housekeeper felt sorry for him, but her position was too low for her words to carry much weight, and Mr. and Mrs. Carter had stubbornly refused to see the truth. There was nothing she could do. Claire and Richard exchanged stunned looks. They remembered what had happened when Ethan was 8. That was the year they adopted Ryan. Ryan had taken a liking to Ethan's large bedroom. At the time, they had planned to prepare another large room for Ethan. But Ethan kept making mistakes, and they wanted to teach him a lesson, so they put the matter aside. And somehow, they had left it that way for 8 full years. A trace of guilt flashed through Claire and Richard's eyes. I was their biological son, yet I had spent 8 years in this tiny storage room in the Carter home. In the end, they had failed me. One by one, they entered the room. Everything inside was completely different from what they had imagined. The room was tiny. Aside from a narrow bed, there was only a simple wardrobe, a small table, and a little stool. Even the blanket on the bed was painfully thin. They could hardly imagine how I had survived the winters, with 5 people standing inside. The room felt unbearably crowded. The 3 sisters were stunned by what they saw. Their rooms, and Ryan's, were enormous. They had excellent natural light, and every detail had been planned by top designers. We were all children of the Carter family, so they could hardly imagine that I had been living in such a cramped, suffocating storage room. There was a bank card on the desk. Claire recognized it at once. when I was little. She had given it to me as a birthday present. Yet, I had not taken the card with me. He even left his bank card behind. Is Ethan planning to starve to death out there? Olivia snapped irritably. It was possible to link the card to a phone, but the account was under their mom's name. Each of them had one. If he left the card at home, was he not afraid Mom would cancel it? Claire picked up the card with trembling hands. She hurriedly took out her phone and checked the transaction history. The rest of the Carter family realized what Claire was doing and immediately crowded around to look. After unlocking her phone, Claire opened the account she had not checked in 8 years. What appeared on the screen next left everyone completely stunned. Other than the 200,000 yuan Claire had deposited, the account was completely untouched. There had not been a single transaction in 8 years. The last purchase made with the card was 6 years ago, and the only deposit dated back 8 years. In other words, 6 years ago. When I was only 10, I had already stopped using this card. Richard's voice came out strained. When was the last time any of you gave Ethan cash? The room fell silent. After a long silence, Claire answered, 8 years ago. The 3 Carter sisters were equally shocked. We did too, they said in unison. Then how did he survive all these years? Grace murmured in disbelief. At that moment, the housekeeper standing nearby could no longer hold back. She had worked for the Carter family for more than 20 years. Since before the eldest daughter was born, she had been with the family all that time. She looked at Mr. and Mrs. Carter with pity and said, ever since you adopted young Master Ryan, young Master Ethan has spent most of his time in this storage room. Whenever he made you angry, he would go without enough food and be left hungry. The first couple of years were not as bad. Young Master Ethan could still buy himself bread and things like that, but later when his money ran out, he went hungry for quite some time. Then, one day, when I went out to buy groceries, I found him washing dishes at a restaurant. How could he have been washing dishes? Sophia cried out in disbelief. The housekeeper nodded. Young Master Ethan was still very young then, so he could not earn much. I often slipped him bread in secret. Later, as young Master Ethan grew older, he became able to earn enough money to buy his own food. The entire family was dumbfounded. It was true that whenever I was home, I was always accused of causing one problem or another. At meals, I only dared take food from the dishes directly in front of me. Whenever I was scolded or beaten, I truly did not get much to eat, but they had never imagined I had been so hungry, that I had to work part-time just to feed myself. 10 years old. I had only been 10, and I was already washing dishes for strangers. I'd kept doing that part-time job for 6 years. Richard roared angrily. Why did you not tell me something this serious? The housekeeper flinched at his fury. She hurriedly explained, when I found him, young Master Ethan saw me. He begged me not to tell any of you. Claire had already broken down in tears, and my poor child. She could not bear to imagine what it had been like for me at 10 years old. At such a young age, I had gone out to wash dishes for strangers, earning a meager wage just to buy bread. I was a child of the Carter family, the young heir who should have grown up surrounded by luxury. How could I possibly have endured such hardship? Their 3 daughters had never even cooked themselves a meal growing up, much less washed dishes for strangers, to earn their own living expenses. Claire thought of my rough hands, covered in thick calluses, and her heart felt as though an invisible hand had seized it. The pain was almost suffocating. Richard stood rooted to the spot. He stammered, I remember now. A restaurant owner once told me several years ago that a young dishwasher in his kitchen looked like Ethan. I did not pay any attention at the time. It never occurred to me that he would wash dishes for other people to earn money. Only at that moment did Richard finally acknowledge the truth that I had suffered in the Carter family. He regretted it deeply. Had he gone to sea for himself back then, I would not have suffered for so many years. Claire sobbed as she spoke. We were far too harsh on him and cared far too little about him. That was why he never dared tell us. Grace sighed. She had once, accidentally, seen my rough hands. She had been confused at the time, but she had already grown accustomed to treating me coldly. So she never asked me about them. Mom and Dad said he was badly bullied today, and was injured too. I wonder how he's doing now. Inside the tiny storage room, the atmosphere was unbearably oppressive. Sophia seemed lost in thought, but said nothing. Although Olivia was somewhat moved, she still looked down on me. Maybe this is all just another one of his tricks to gain our sympathy. Around the corner outside the doorway, hidden from their sight, Ryan's entire body stiffened, and his fists clenched tightly. That bastard. I thought once I drove him away, this family would finally belong entirely to me. It was not easy getting him to leave, but now that he is gone, they have actually started caring about him. Ryan took a deep breath. Suppressing his anger and jealousy, he pretended he had just woken up, then stepped around the corner and appeared before them. "Dad, Mom, you're back," he said in a weak, feeble voice, leaning against the doorway, as though he might collapse at any moment. Olivia cried out, "Ryan," and hurried forward to support him. She asked gently, "Are you feeling unwell again?" Ryan clutched his chest and nodded weakly. "I'm fine. I just need to rest for a while." Ryan's face was rosy and healthy, without the slightest trace of weakness. Yet his clumsy acting always managed to fool the Carter family, even while pretending to be weak. He did not forget to ask, "How is Ethan? Is he all right?" Claire stopped crying when she heard Ryan's voice. She walked over to him, hesitated briefly, and finally asked, "Ryan, tell Mom the truth. Why do you always bring people to beat Ethan up?" The moment she said this, all three sisters were stunned. They only knew that Ethan had indeed been injured, and that a group of people had attacked him. But how could Ryan have been the one leading them? Ryan's lowered hand suddenly tightened. But he quickly composed himself. With an innocent and wounded expression, he said, "Mom, why would you say that? No matter what, Ethan is still my brother. How could I bring people to beat him up?" Tears quickly filled his eyes, threatening to fall at any moment, as though he had suffered an unbearable injustice. However, this time, Claire and Richard did not react as they usually did. By immediately comforting him, their movements paused. "But we watched the surveillance footage, and you really were the one who led the attack on Ethan." Claire frowned slightly. Ryan clenched his fists. "Surveillance footage. There was actually a camera. He usually attacked me in bathrooms without cameras, or in secluded alleys. How could there have been surveillance footage?" He carefully recalled every place where he had bullied Ethan. It seemed he had carelessly done it in the hallway a few times. Before Ryan could say anything, Olivia hurriedly said, "Dad, Mom, videos can be fabricated nowadays. How do you know the surveillance footage you saw was genuine?" Compared with Olivia, Sophia was slightly calmer. She instead asked, "Dad, Mom, where did you see the footage? Could Ethan have arranged for someone to tamper with it?" She did not finish her sentence, but everyone present understood what she meant. She absolutely refused to believe that Ryan would lead others in bullying Ethan. Ryan was so gentle and well-behaved. How could he possibly take the initiative to bully someone? Ethan, on the other hand, had befriended a group of delinquents outside school and got into fights every day. He seemed far more likely to be the bully. Richard immediately shattered their speculation. "We saw it at the police station. Chief Anderson showed it to us personally." When she heard Chief Anderson's name, Grace immediately furrowed her brow. Since he had personally shown the footage to their parents, then could Ryan really have? Grace was the calmest of the three sisters and had been quietly observing Ryan. Although his strange reaction was subtle, it still did not escape Grace's notice. A trace of panic flashed through Ryan's eyes, but he had spent his entire life perfecting his acting and quickly regained his composure. Tears slid down his cheeks as he stared at everyone in disbelief, his voice choked with emotion. "Dad, Mom, Grace, Sophia, Olivia, do you not believe me?" Seeing him like this immediately softened Richard and Claire's hearts. Claire hurriedly wiped away his tears. "Ryan, it is not that we do not believe you. We know you must have had a reason. We only want to know what happened." The look in Richard's eyes visibly softened as well. Only Grace remained unmoved. She watched the tearful Ryan and frowned slightly. Ryan would turn 16 in 3 days and was already nearly a grown man. Ethan had begun earning money to support himself at 10. Although he had been constantly scolded over the years and beaten by Dad, she had never once seen him shed a tear. Yet Ryan cried at the slightest provocation. For the first time, when Grace saw Ryan crying, she felt no urge to comfort him. She even found him somewhat irritating. Olivia said irritably, "What other reason could there be? Ethan fights at school every day. He must constantly bully Ryan there too." Ryan probably had no choice but to fight back. Hearing this, everyone instantly became nervous. Claire anxiously looked Ryan over from head to toe. Did Ethan bully you? Were you injured? Every member of the Carter family became worried. Only Grace's eyes remained filled with doubt. The surveillance footage Chief Anderson showed them was only a small part of what had happened. As for what occurred outside the camera's view, who knew what might have happened? A trace of triumph flashed through Ryan's lowered eyes. He did not even need to invent an excuse himself. He bit his lip tightly and remained silent. He said nothing, yet it seemed as though he had said everything. The moment they saw his reaction, everyone thought they understood. Ethan had actually dared to bully Ryan at school. He must have lost his mind. After bullying Ryan, he had even turned around and accused him, persuading Ryan to seek medical treatment and report it to the police, because he wanted Ryan sent to prison. Fortunately, Ryan had not yet turned 16. Otherwise, Ethan's scheme might have succeeded, and they had actually felt sorry for Ethan. Richard and Claire were instantly overwhelmed with regret. Fortunately, Ryan had known how to fight back. Otherwise, there was no telling how badly Ethan might have bullied him. The housekeeper was stunned by the accusations before her. As far as she knew, young Master Ethan had suffered numerous injuries, but young Master Ryan had none. Ever since he was little, even the slightest red mark on his skin would send him running to Mom for comfort and sympathy. If Ethan had truly bullied him, how could he possibly have kept quiet? Had he really been bullied? And had he really been bullied, he would have caused such a scene that everyone would know about it. Only this family could be so incapable of telling right from wrong and be deceived by him so easily. I woke up early the next morning. Today was a special day. I had never bought a lottery ticket before, but on this day, I happened to pass a lottery store, and the winning numbers posted outside caught my attention. The prize that person won was not especially large, but for someone like me who was always hungry, I desperately longed for it. Quale and Tenjin, Ame, Parses, I memorized the winning numbers. After quickly washing up, I bought a steamed bun by the roadside and headed straight to the lottery store. I did not have a penny to my name. All I had left was $2. The most important thing for me now was to buy that ticket. I arrived at the counter, panting heavily, and handed the owner my last $2. I recited the numbers I remembered. The owner was a middle-aged man. He looked at the $2 in front of him, then at my faded, worn-out clothes, and shook his head inwardly. A child from such a poor family should be studying hard, not wasting money on lottery tickets. Outside the lottery store, people passing by saw my pale, emaciated appearance and could not help shaking their heads and sighing. That child is already dirt poor, yet he is still gambling away his family's hard-earned money. I ignored them. After taking the ticket, I quietly began the long wait. Time passed second by second, and I could not help feeling nervous. There was only 1 minute left before the drawing. The atmosphere inside the store grew tense. The lottery players clutched their tickets tightly, repeating their numbers over and over under their breaths. At last, the drawing began. I was staring nervously at the screen when my phone suddenly rang. I took it out and saw that Grace was calling. Ryan had probably said something to them at home again, and she was calling this early to yell at me. I had no desire to waste words on her, so I hung up without hesitation. On the other end of the call, Grace stared at her phone in disbelief. I had actually dared to hang up on her. In the past, even when she called to berate me, I would only listen obediently. I had never dared hang up first. A surge of anger instinctively rose in Grace's heart. She looked at the tightly closed dormitory door and frowned deeply. It had been too late last night, so she came to school early this morning to find me. She had even gone out of her way to ask where my dorm was. She desperately wanted to see me and ask what exactly had happened. Eventually, I grew annoyed and blocked Grace's number altogether. One number after another slowly appeared on the large screen. Before I knew it, my palms were covered in sweat. The first number matched. The second number matched too. Then the third number matched. Finally, all the numbers had been revealed. I let out a long breath of relief. The lottery store filled with sighs and curses, but I was in an excellent mood. The prize was not much, but it was enough. Happily holding my ticket, I returned to the counter. The owner checked the numbers for me, and his words struck the store like a bolt of thunder. Everyone immediately crowded around. He won. He really won. And it was not a small prize either. A full $10,000. A scruffy-looking man in his early 30s could not resist walking over. He looked me up and down. "Kid, I have never seen you before. Is this your first time buying a ticket?" I did not pay him much attention, and merely nodded. After receiving my confirmation, a smile slowly appeared on the man's face. He moved a little closer to me. "Winning such a large prize on your first ticket, what is your secret? Why not tell your big brother?" His words clearly carried both a threat and a probing edge. The lottery owner paused while counting the money. Then he turned to me and asked, "I can pay out the $10,000 here. Do you have a bank account? I can transfer the money to it." Ignoring the man, I shook my head and answered the owner honestly, "No." "Then should I transfer it to a family member's account?" The owner glanced at the man and asked again. That man had always been light-fingered. Whenever someone won while alone and looked easy to bully, he would steal from them. He had even spent several years in prison. He was a genuine street thug. The boy before him looked only 16 or 17 and was so thin and frail. Carrying $10,000 in cash would obviously be unsafe. He had already been targeted before even leaving the store. I glanced at the man and understood the owner's good intentions, but there was no chance. I would transfer the money into a family member's account. "No, just give me the cash." My answer made the owner anxious. This student clearly had no idea how dangerous society could be. Someone had already set his sights on him, yet he did not seem nervous at all. Losing the money would be the least of his worries. The owner was more afraid that he might get hurt. With no other choice, he counted out $10,000 and handed it to me. Then he patted me on the shoulder and advised earnestly, "Kid, hurry straight home." Not long after I left, the man followed me. The lottery owner hurriedly called out, "Wait." He hesitated for a moment, then said, "He is still only a child." "So what if he is a child? Why the hell should I care?" The man threw out those words and walked away without looking back. After receiving the money, I headed straight for the bank. I was already 16, which meant I could open my own bank account. When I reached a deserted alley, the thug from the lottery store suddenly jumped out. He was holding a wooden club and slowly approached me with a sinister grin. "Kid, what a coincidence meeting you here. What do you want?" I frowned. "Hand over the money obediently, and I will let you go without beating you. How's that sound?" I watched him warily and immediately understood that he intended to rob me. "Are you not afraid of going to prison?" I stalled him while speaking and searched my surroundings for a suitable weapon. I did not know how strong this thug was or whether he knew how to fight, but since he had a club, I had to be careful. The thug scoffed. "Prison? It is not like I have never been there before. What is there to fear? Is that so?" I suddenly gave him a wicked smile and snatched up a stick beside me, pushing hard off the ground. I charged straight at the thug. He never imagined I would attack first, and in his shock, he took my club squarely across the body. Grunting in pain, he quickly recovered and swung his own club in retaliation. Perhaps because he had spent years fighting on the streets, he had developed considerable practical experience, although I had received professional training. This 16-year-old body of mine was severely malnourished, and my stamina was nowhere near his. For a while, the two of us fought on even terms. I began to grow anxious. I did not have enough stamina to drag this out. I had to end the fight quickly. In the middle of the struggle, I suddenly spotted a thin electrical wire running along the wall. I hardened my resolve, found an opening, and stepped on the wire with my left foot, while yanking it hard with my right hand. The wire was forcibly torn apart. Without hesitation, I thrust the exposed end directly against the thug. At the same time, I quickly shoved him away and put distance between us. The wooden club in his hand was still raised high, ready to smash down on my head, when a powerful current suddenly surged through his body. His entire body went numb, and before he could even curse, his eyes instantly went blank, and his body collapsed to the ground. I immediately pulled the wire away and tossed it aside, then slumped onto the ground, gasping for breath. The thug had received a serious electric shock. Had the voltage not been low, and the contact lasted only a brief moment, the shock might have killed him outright. Once I caught my breath, I immediately called the police. I felt my pocket. The money was still there, and by coincidence, the officer leading the team was the same one from last time. The moment he got out of the car, he saw me leaning against the wall. Nay, and frowned. Why is it you again? I gave him a weak smile. Yeah, what a coincidence. I was the one who called. He tried to rob me. The other officers quickly restrained the thug, who had just recovered, and was trying to get up and escape. The moment they saw his face, they knew he was a repeat offender. He had only recently been released from prison and still had not changed. The officer supporting me could not help feeling sorry for me. This kid really had terrible luck. He was bullied on his birthday yesterday and robbed today. The thug and I were both taken to the police station. After my wounds were bandaged and the necessary statements were taken, I left the station. The final outcome would have to wait until the proper procedures were completed. There was no reason for me to remain at the station, so I left as soon as I finished giving my statement. Looking at the bandages covering me, the lead officer offered, "Where are you going? I can give you a ride." Most boys my age would have broken down after going through so much and suffering so many grievances. But I had handled everything calmly, without crying or making a scene, and my eyes remained completely clear, something he had never seen before. The lead officer could not help forming a much better impression of me. I nodded. Thank you. Having a police officer escort me was naturally the safest option. Daniel Brooks, I murmured his name, stunned. He was an upright man with exceptional ability. In just a few years, he would rise from an ordinary officer to become chief of the South City Police Department. The two of us chatted along the way, and the more Daniel spoke with me, the more he felt that I was exactly his kind of person. After leaving the bank, I headed straight to the electronics mall. I did not waste any time and bought the same kind of computer I had used in my previous life, a model I knew inside and out. Then I went straight back to the dorm. I turned on the computer with practiced ease and opened a brokerage account. I visited the website I remembered from my previous life and found the stock that had only just begun trading, but was about to soar in the coming days. Right now, it was still an obscure and completely unremarkable stock. But in 2 days, everything would change. I closed the computer, then leisurely took out a practice test and began working through it. Ryan's grades were not particularly good. He was only slightly above average in our class. He told the Carter family it was because of his poor health, that his grades never improved. My own grades were not outstanding either, but I always scored higher than Ryan on every exam. Yet, whenever we brought our test papers home, they only praised Ryan and rewarded him with all kinds of gifts for his hard work. As for me, whose grades were clearly better than his, no one ever paid any attention. I stretched, but my injuries had not yet healed, and the movement sent sharp pain tearing through me. I rubbed my aching body, then washed up and fell asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. The next day, on the school grounds, one youthful, energetic figure after another walked toward their classrooms in groups of 2 or 3. They laughed and talked about the latest interesting gossip, their young faces free of any serious worries. I stood in the dormitory corridor and watched them. For the first time, I realized what a wonderful place school could be. I took a deep breath of fresh air and headed toward my classroom. Inside the classroom, the students were heatedly discussing something. Did you hear? Ethan actually called the police. I heard. Logan and the others are still being held at the station. He really dared to report them. Isn't he afraid Ryan will retaliate? And did you hear this? The speaker suddenly lowered his voice mysteriously. He glanced around, and after making sure a certain person was not there, he finally dared continue. I heard Madison was the one who saved Ethan. Madison. Everyone instantly sucked in a breath. Then realization dawned on them. No wonder he dared call the police. Madison was probably the one who reported it for him. Does that mean Madison has gone up against Ryan? Excitement immediately flickered in everyone's eyes. Ryan and Madison were known as the two most untouchable people in school. All this time, they had stayed out of each other's way, but now they had finally clashed. Morning. Madison's light voice came from behind me. I turned around, and a smile appeared on my face. Morning. After greeting me, she walked straight past and headed toward her own classroom. Madison and I were in the same grade, but in different classes. The noisy classroom fell completely silent the moment I entered. Just now, in the hallway, many students had seen Madison greet me with their own eyes. That made everyone even more certain that I had somehow gained Madison's protection. Before they could finish digesting that piece of gossip, another figure appeared at the classroom door. It was Ryan Carter. He stared at my straight-backed figure, his eyes overflowing with hatred. It was all because of me. I had stolen away the affection he enjoyed in the Carter family. That very morning, he had clearly sensed that Grace was no longer as warm toward him as before. Unable to restrain himself, he sneered at me. Well, look who it is. The little bastard himself. I was walking toward my seat when I heard Ryan's voice. I turned and looked at him coldly. When Ryan saw that I actually dared meet his gaze, his anger instantly flared. Ethan, I have not seen you for 2 days, and you have certainly grown bolder. Are you asking for another beating? Watching him jump around in fury, I suddenly found it rather amusing. What is it, you little cuckoo in someone else's nest? You failed to get yourself sent to jail the day before yesterday. So now you want to spend a few days at the police station. Ryan flew into a rage. Who are you calling a cuckoo in someone else's nest? Listening to our exchange, everyone sucked in a sharp breath. Had Ethan suddenly lost all sense of fear today? How could he dare speak to young Master Carter like that? Ryan was the eldest young master of the Carter family, and the richest student in the entire class. Even their parents had to smile ingratiatingly. Whenever they met him, I looked at him with mocking amusement. You are just an adopted son the Carter family took in from an orphanage. Yet you used underhanded means to push me, the real Carter heir, out of my own family. If that is not stealing someone else's place, what is? Did living in the Carter home for a few years really make you think you were the true heir? The moment those words left my mouth, an uproar swept through the classroom. Ryan's eyes widened in disbelief. What was I saying? How could I dare reveal something like this at school? The entire class erupted. Did I hear that correctly? He said Ryan was adopted by the Carter family, and Ethan is the real Carter heir. No one would ignore their biological son, just to favor an adopted child, right? All kinds of expressions appeared around the classroom. Everyone began talking at once, speculating about whether the story could be true. More and more people thought that if I were lying, the truth would be exposed immediately. I should not be stupid enough to do that, which meant Ryan might really be the adopted son. They had spent years clinging to Ryan, and many of them had bullied me more than once, just to please him. Now they had learned the truth. My God. The way everyone looked at Ryan instantly changed. Many students immediately took out their phones and recorded the tense confrontation between us. Some even started live streaming it. After recovering from his shock, Ryan saw all the phones pointed at him and quickly reacted. He put on an expression of utter disbelief and hurt as he looked at me. What are you talking about, you penniless loser? How dare you pretend to be the Carter heir? There are better ways to get rich than making up a lie like this. The moment Ryan said that, the students began whispering among themselves, and the tide of criticism instantly turned against me. I knew it. He really is. So desperate to get rich that he has lost his mind. He is trying to scam young Master Carter. For long, a story about a vain student slandering the Carter heir. In an attempt to extort money shot to the top of the trending list. Photos of both of us were attached. For a while, the people online could not tell which one of us was telling the truth and which one was lying. I was so angry, I nearly laughed. Ryan had clearly grown accustomed to bullying me. He thought I would still let him slander me as he pleased, without daring to fight back, because I was afraid of upsetting the Carter family. Since that is what you claim, why do we not call the police? One investigation will reveal the exact year and date. The Carter family adopted you from the orphanage. Ryan's face turned pale. His fists clenched tightly, until his fingertips turned white. Suddenly, an idea flashed through his mind, and he looked as though he had discovered something horrifying. Ethan, I cannot believe you would go this far for your own vanity. You even bribed the police. How despicable can you be? The moment he said this, the classroom erupted again. Who would have thought Ethan was capable of something like that? As Ryan listened to the students talking, a smug smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. He had only claimed that I bribed the police. He had never said exactly what I had bribed them to do. Everything else was merely a rumor invented by these foolish students. His accusation would also make the Carter family wonder whether the surveillance footage they saw the day before yesterday had been tampered with by the officer I supposedly bribed. The Carter family had always been quick to imagine the worst about me, and Ryan was highly skilled at manipulating them this way. Lost in his triumph, he failed to notice the beautiful figure standing outside the classroom. Grace had waited outside my dormitory all morning yesterday, but never saw me, and could not reach me by phone. So today, she had deliberately come to my classroom to find me. She wanted to learn the truth. She wanted to know whether Ryan had truly beaten me, and whether the surveillance footage their parents had seen was actually genuine before she entered the classroom. She heard the argument inside. This time, she did not rush in to defend Ryan. Instead, she remained outside and quietly listened to our conversation for a while. Grace heard every single word. Her eyes widened in disbelief. What was Ryan saying? He was actually denying at school that Ethan was an heir of the Carter family, although their parents had indeed publicly claimed that Ryan was their biological son. They had never once said that Ethan was not their child. Back then, their parents had forbidden Ethan from telling anyone at school that he was a member of the Carter family because they wanted to protect Ryan. But how could Ryan openly deny in front of outsiders that Ethan was a true heir of the Carter family, who had given him the nerve? Grace could no longer tolerate it and walked straight into the classroom. Her appearance instantly silenced the noisy room. The moment Ryan saw Grace, panic surged through him. She probably had not heard what he said just now. She could not have heard it. Had she heard him arguing with Ethan, she would have rushed in immediately to protect him. That was what Ryan told himself, and his anxious heart gradually settled. Before Grace could say anything, Ryan hurried over to her in a few quick steps. He exclaimed happily, "Grace, what brings you here?" Everyone assumed she had personally come to the school, because she was worried about Ryan. Seeing the admiration and amazement in their eyes made Ryan even more pleased with himself. He deliberately moved closer to Grace and said affectionately, "Grace, you are always so busy. How did you find time to come all the way to school just to see me?" Then Ryan pretended to be strong. "Do not worry, Grace. I am already feeling much better. I am fine. You do not need to worry about me." Seeing how close and familiar they appeared, everyone cast envious glances at them at the same time, and they looked toward me as though waiting for a show. I had actually dared to impersonate the Carter family's eldest son. And now, the Carter family's eldest daughter had arrived in person. They wanted to see how thoroughly she would humiliate me. Everyone wore an eager, entertained expression. Some students even pointed their live stream cameras directly at the three of us. I had no interest in dealing with these bored people, so I returned directly to my seat, took out a practice test, and focused on studying. 2 years was far too long. I wanted to graduate as soon as possible and cut all ties with the Carter family. I did not want to look at these people for another second. Grace frowned. She glanced indifferently at Ryan, instead of reacting as she normally would, by immediately asking whether he felt all right. She quietly took a step away from him. Ryan was too immersed in everyone's flattery to notice anything unusual about Grace. He stood there like a proud peacock, basking in everyone's praise, and occasionally responded with false politeness and a few modest words. Because of Grace's arrival, everyone instantly forgot what I had just revealed, and swarmed around the two of them. They desperately tried to make themselves noticed by Grace. This was an extremely rare opportunity. If they could, somehow, win the favor of the Carter family's eldest daughter, they would gain prestige both at home and among their classmates. When that happened, their families would begin viewing them as rising stars and give them access to more resources. Many of these students were not the only children in their families. They had to compete against their own siblings. The child who could bring greater benefits to the family would naturally hold a higher position at home. Ryan clearly noticed the impatience in Grace's eyes, so he hurriedly stepped in front of her. "What are all of you doing? Do not frighten my sister." The crowd had no choice but to flatter Ryan instead, hoping he would give them a chance to approach Grace. That was exactly what Ryan wanted. What he enjoyed most was seeing people flatter and fawn over him, while the classroom remained crowded and noisy. Another graceful figure suddenly appeared at the door. Her arrival, Al-Fol, sent the entire classroom into an uproar. A large group of students had followed her there. They packed the entrance to the classroom. Some had come to watch the excitement, while others had simply followed the beautiful girl. It is Isabella Reed, the most beautiful girl in school. He came too. I heard she is young Master Carter's fiancée, and the future daughter-in-law of the Carter family. Grace listened to their discussion. And frowned slightly. The Carter family's future daughter-in-law. They also believed that Isabella was Ryan's fiancée. It was true that Isabella had a childhood engagement with the Carter family. More than a decade ago, the Carter Corporation had fallen into crisis. At that time, the Reed family had stepped forward and helped the Carter family survive. Dad had been deeply grateful for the Reed family's kindness, so he arranged for me, when I was only a few months old, to be betrothed to Isabella, who had not even been born yet. Because I had been neglected by my family all these years. Even Isabella, my fiancée, had been ignored by them. But one thing was absolutely certain. The person engaged to Isabella was me, not Ryan. Ryan saw the amazement in everyone's eyes, and turned to find Isabella standing at the doorway, as elegant and pure as a blooming lotus. A broad smile instantly appeared on his face. "What brings you here?" He greeted her warmly. While eagerly walking toward her, Isabella looked at the smiling Ryan, and her beautiful face flushed. She shyly glanced at Grace, then said to Ryan with reddened cheeks, "I heard Grace came to school, so I came to see her." Ryan pushed through the crowd, and naturally took Isabella's hand. He said gently, "Isabella, come with me. I will introduce you to my sister." Looking at their tightly clasped hands, Grace's brow furrowed deeply. What was going on? Isabella was clearly Ethan's fiancée, and Ethan was still right here, yet the two of them were behaving so intimately. Grace turned to look at me, only to see me studying with my head lowered. My eyes remained fixed on the test paper on my desk, as though all the conflict around me had nothing whatsoever to do with me. We had been siblings for so many years. This was the first time Grace had ever looked at me so carefully. I had already grown so much. It was just that my cheeks were far too thin. I really must have suffered greatly in the Carter family. Ryan brought Isabella over to Grace and introduced her with a broad smile. "Grace, this is my girlfriend, Isabella Reed." Grace frowned. She looked at Isabella and asked, "Miss Reed, are you Ryan's girlfriend?" Isabella nodded shyly. Her voice was indescribably soft and delicate. "Grace, my name is Isabella Reed, and I am young Master Carter's fiancée. Our fathers arranged the engagement when we were children. Do you remember?" Grace's frown deepened, since Isabella knew that she had been promised to a young master of the Carter family. Then she should also know exactly which young master he had been engaged to. Ryan looked earnestly at Grace and said, "Grace, I love Isabella. Once I graduate, I am going to marry her." Hearing Ryan's firm promise, Isabella's face grew even redder. Ryan's declaration immediately sent a wave of shrieks through the classroom. Grace listened to the students' exaggerated screaming and looked at the hands the two of them were holding tightly. Without realizing it, a haze of anger rose inside her. Grace frowned and asked Isabella, "Do you not know who you are engaged to?" The shy expression on Isabella's face froze. She looked up at Grace in surprise. What did Grace mean by that? Of course, she knew who she was engaged to. But had Ryan not said that he was the Carter family's most beloved young master? Everything she had observed over the years seemed to confirm it. He had already asked about the engagement when it was arranged all those years ago. They had only said she was engaged to a young master of the Carter family. No one had specifically named which one. The Carter family adored Ryan so much that as long as Ryan said he loved her, they would, certainly, change the engagement so that she would marry him. Why was Grace suddenly acting this way now? Ryan was also startled by Grace's sudden question. He had deliberately told Grace that he loved Isabella and wanted to marry her someday. Precisely so, the Carter family would transfer the engagement to him. But when he saw the crowd watching around them, Ryan hurriedly interrupted. "Grace, Isabella and I truly love each other." Ryan's implication was obvious. He was saying that he loved Isabella and wanted the engagement transferred to him. This time, however, Grace did not immediately indulge him or agree with what he said. She continued speaking to Isabella. "Miss Reed, you should know that the Carter heir you are engaged to is Ethan Carter. Yet you have now become the girlfriend of Ethan's younger brother, Ryan." Do you have any respect for the Carter family's reputation? Poise. And you too, Ryan. Grace turned toward him, her voice still carrying a trace of coldness. Ethan is a rightful heir of the Carter family. He is the child Mom carried for 10 months and gave birth to. He is my biological younger brother. And he is your older brother. When did he become a penniless loser? As Grace continued speaking, her voice filled with intense anger. Although she truly had looked down on me before, I was still her biological brother, and a young master of the Carter family. That bond of blood could never be changed. It was a fact no one could erase. Her disapproval of me was one matter, but she would not tolerate anyone bullying me at school. That was not merely a slap in her face. It was a slap in the Carter family's face as well. That was why, after learning I had been bullied, she insisted on finding me and demanding an explanation. Grace looked at the shocked Ryan and slightly suppressed her anger. Then she continued, Ryan, without obtaining Ethan's permission, you took your older brother's fiancée for yourself. Do you really think that is appropriate? When Grace finished speaking, both inside and outside the classroom, everything fell into a deathly silence. Everyone stared blankly at them. What had she just said? She said Ethan was the true young master of the Carter family, and that the school beauty Isabella Reed was Ethan's fiancée. Then Ryan really was the child adopted by the Carter family. Everything Ethan had said was true. My God, how could that be possible? After the brief silence, the crowd erupted. All this time, Ryan had presented himself as the Carter family's only heir, and as the fiancé of Isabella Reed, the most beautiful girl in school, because of those two identities. He had always acted arrogantly at school, but now they were being told that both were false. His identity as the wealthy family's only heir was false, and so was his identity as the school beauty's fiancé. At school, Ryan and I had always been complete opposites. Ryan was the wealthiest young master in the entire school, while I was the poorest loser there. The students had often trampled on and humiliated me. Ryan and Isabella were both completely stunned by Grace's words. Neither of them had ever imagined that she would take this attitude. Had she not always doted on Ryan the most? How could she? How could she suddenly defend that bastard, especially in front of so many people? How was Ryan supposed to remain at this school, or in this class after this? At the Carter residence, the family had just finished breakfast and was preparing to leave. Sophia took out her phone and was immediately drawn to a trending story that appeared on the screen. She instinctively opened it. It was a live stream from Ryan's school. Seeing the flood of comments insulting Ryan, Sophia's eyes widened in shock. She cried out unconsciously, "What are they doing?" Olivia immediately moved closer to Sophia and looked at the screen of her phone when she saw what was happening. Olivia could not help crying out as well. Richard frowned. Is it not just more ridiculous online gossip? Sophia hurriedly turned the phone screen toward Richard and Claire. The live stream instantly appeared before them, along with the overwhelming flood of insults. How could this happen? What are they doing? Richard flew into a rage. How dare they treat Ryan like this? What did he ever do to offend them? Claire's eyes instantly reddened, whether from anger or because she felt wronged on Ryan's behalf. Olivia immediately pulled out her phone and entered the live stream. Her fingers flew across the screen as she began firing back at the commenters. Do none of you have anything better to do? Why are you all targeting him? Do you really think the Carter family is easy to provoke? The moment Olivia's comments appeared, they immediately triggered a fierce response from the viewers. The person above must have just joined the live stream before commenting on something you know nothing about. I strongly suggest watching the replay. Seeing someone call Ryan a scumbag, Olivia instantly exploded with fury. Who are you calling a scumbag? He is such a gentle and well-behaved boy. How can you bear to treat him this way? Are you not afraid of divine punishment? Olivia's fingers never stopped moving. They were almost leaving after images across the screen. Do you know who the person you are defending really is? Every word out of his mouth is a lie. Only fools like you would believe his nonsense. Olivia was clearly furious and had begun speaking without thinking. Grace was no longer with the family at that moment, so Olivia had not seen what Grace had said. She simply assumed I was bullying Ryan at school. When the viewers saw her blindly defending him, the entire live stream erupted. Even the other members of the Carter family frowned when they saw what she had written. Belittling a member of their own family in front of outsiders was only humiliating the Carter family. But the Carter family did not immediately reprimand her. But the viewers in the live stream were not going to let her off so easily. The words compulsive liar described Ryan almost perfectly. Exactly, Ethan is clearly a true heir of the Carter family. Yet Ryan called the real heir a penniless loser, who was impersonating a Carter to extort money. Fortunately, the eldest Carter daughter arrived. Otherwise, we would all have been deceived by him. When they saw those comments, the Carter family exchanged bewildered looks. What was going on? Why could they not understand what everyone was saying? Ryan had denied the true Carter heir's identity. How could Ryan possibly have done such a thing? In the beginning, they had only told Ethan, not to mention at school, that he was a Carter heir, so Ryan would not feel inferior. But publicly denying Ethan's identity was entirely different. At last, they began to sense that something about this situation was not right. Sophia hurriedly opened the live stream replay. The platform automatically recorded every live stream. Fortunately, it had that feature, or she would not have been able to watch what had happened. The Carter family held their breath and stared fixedly at the phone on the table on that tiny screen. Every scene that had just taken place in the classroom peered before their eyes when they saw me publicly reveal that Ryan was the Carter family's adopted son. The Carter family immediately showed intense anger. They had forbidden me from telling anyone at school that I was a Carter heir because they wanted to protect Ryan and keep him from feeling inferior. Yet what was Ethan doing now? He had actually announced in public that Ryan was the Carter family's adopted son. Just as they were growing furious, something happened that left them completely dumbfounded. Ryan had actually called Ethan a penniless loser and claimed he was trying to extort money by pretending to be a Carter heir out of vanity. The Carter family exchanged glances. The way Ryan had behaved just now was completely different from the Ryan they knew. Had they not known this was a live stream, they would hardly have believed it. Richard and Claire could not help remembering the surveillance footage they had seen at the police station. Could Ryan truly have been bullying Ethan at school? Grace was not looking at her phone, so she had no idea what was happening in the live stream. I continued working through my practice test. When Grace came over to me, I did not even lift my head. Grace took a deep breath, then softened her voice. Ethan, what exactly is going on? I waited for you all morning yesterday. Where did you go? Previously, everyone had only known that the Carter family adored Ryan to an excessive degree, even after learning just now that I was the Carter family's true biological heir. They still did not believe the family cared much about me. After all, everyone had seen how poor I always looked. I could barely afford a side dish with my meals, and was reluctant to spend money on anything. The Carter family was enormously wealthy, yet they had allowed their own son to live like this. It was obvious how little they valued me. But Grace was such a busy and accomplished person, and she had just said that she waited outside my dormitory all morning yesterday. Did that mean Ethan was actually important to her? I knew what she was asking about, but I had no intention of answering her. I did not want to waste time on people who meant nothing to me. Grace looked at me in astonishment. Yesterday, I had hung up on her again and again, and today, I was completely ignoring her, without the slightest intention of responding. Grace could clearly sense that I had changed. I was no longer the same person. Ever since that Saturday, when I asked for a birthday cake, I had begun to change. Grace did not become angry. She continued, Ethan, come outside for a moment. Let us talk somewhere else. Family scandals should not be aired in public. There were too many people watching here, and far too many phones pointed at them. What Ryan had done just now had already humiliated the Carter family enough. When I saw that Grace had no intention of giving up, I finally stopped writing and looked up. Frowning slightly, I looked at her. Miss Carter, I believe you have already learned the truth. Since you do not believe me, why bother asking? Would you believe me even if I told you? Ever since the family adopted Ryan, when had any of them ever believed a word I said? Grace froze. I had called her Miss Carter. I no longer called her my sister. The more carefully she thought about it, the more she realized it was true. No one in the family had ever believed me. I said impatiently, "Class is about to begin. Unless you have something important to say, stop disturbing me." An awkward expression crossed Grace's face. Being dismissed in public by the younger brother, the family neglected, was somewhat humiliating for her. Everything had happened too quickly. Isabella was the first to recover. She tugged at Ryan's sleeve. Ryan had been watching Grace and me closely. When he saw this opportunity, he quickly walked over to Grace. Then he frowned and rebuked me. "Ethan, how can you speak to Grace like that? She only came because she genuinely cares about you, even if you do not like her. You should not humiliate her in front of so many people." I frowned. It was the same manipulative rhetoric again. The same moral blackmail. It was true that I disliked every member of the Carter family, including Grace. But once Ryan announced it publicly like that, the nature of the situation changed completely. Ryan laughed inwardly. So what if Ethan's true identity had been exposed? With his own intelligence and cleverness, Ryan could still make himself the person everyone valued. He would remain the only son the Carter family acknowledged. I finally set down my pen and looked seriously at Ryan. "You are right. I do not like her anymore. But you are the one trying to humiliate her, are you not?" The moment I said that, both Ryan and Grace froze. Ryan immediately became anxious. When have I ever tried to humiliate Grace? She is the sister I respect most. How could I ever bear to embarrass her? I nearly laughed at his response. "The sister you respect most?" "Of course," Ryan answered proudly, while secretly glancing at Grace. "Since you respect her so much, why did you deliberately announce in front of everyone that she had been humiliated and make her lose even more face?" I shot back without the slightest restraint. Ryan still wanted to behave as he had before and use so-called morality to pressure me. I did not. That was not what I meant. Ryan tried to explain, but everyone was already looking at him accusingly, including Grace. They had already sensed that something about Ryan's words was wrong. They simply had not expected a nearly grown man to use such shamelessly manipulative tactics after I stated it so plainly. They finally saw through his scheme. I was utterly sick of their harassment. Wasting time on these matters was nothing less than disrespecting my own life. Just as class was about to begin, a plump figure appeared at the door. Make way. Make way. His round body squeezed through the dense crowd outside the classroom and came over to me. He looked at me and asked, "Are you Ethan Carter?" I turned toward him in confusion. I had never seen him before, but I still answered, "Yes." Principal Lee nodded. His voice unconsciously softened. "I am the new principal. I believe you. Do not be afraid. As long as you attend this school, the teachers and I will protect you." I was slightly surprised to hear that. The new principal, Chief Anderson, had certainly acted quickly. After I reported the bullying, Chief Anderson had only said that he would report the matter to the education board. I never expected that after only 2 days, the new principal would already be in office. The former principal had been cowardly and incompetent. It was not as though he did not know I was being bullied, dowry, but because he feared the Carter family's influence, he had never dared say a word. This Principal Lee seemed much more promising. After speaking to me, Principal Lee turned toward Grace. His expression became stern. "Ms. Carter, this is a school, a place where children come to learn. Please do not interfere with their studies." Grace was equally surprised. The school had actually replaced its principal. Was it because of Ethan? Could the claims that Ethan had been bullied really be true? Otherwise, how could they have dismissed the principal so quickly? Grace could not help forming several suspicions. She also knew she should not continue disrupting the class. She smiled apologetically. "Principal Lee, I will leave now." Ryan anxiously wanted to say something more, but since Grace had already agreed to leave, he could not say much else. Before leaving, Grace lowered her voice and said to me, "I will come back tonight to see you." I ignored her, so Grace could only leave awkwardly. After Grace left, Principal Lee immediately turned toward all the students, who were still holding their phones high, and barked, "What do all of you think you are doing? This is a school, a place for learning, not your personal live stream studio." The students hurriedly put away their phones. Just then, the bell rang. A figure dressed in white entered the classroom just as the bell sounded, and walked directly to the front. Principal Lee pressed both hands downward for silence, then introduced the woman standing beside him, who was smiling at the students. "This is your new homeroom teacher, Ms. Harper. You may call her Ms. Harper." The moment he finished speaking, the classroom erupted in thunderous applause. They finally had a new homeroom teacher. Their previous homeroom teacher had been a rigid old man who cared about nothing but grades, and was also an extreme snob. They had already heard yesterday that the old man had been removed from his position and permanently stripped of his teaching credentials. It was probably because he had allowed me to be bullied for so long. While everyone else was delighted, only Ryan's eyes were filled with darkness. He glared at me bitterly, and a vicious glint flashed through his eyes. Ethan would eventually regret everything he had done today. In a single morning, Ryan had been completely humiliated. The rest of the school day passed quickly. During the break between classes, I used every cent in my bank account to buy the stock I had examined yesterday. As long as nothing unexpected happened, my balance would increase dozens of times over after tomorrow. Strangely enough, Ryan was unusually quiet today. He did not cause me any trouble, nor did he mock or ridicule me as he normally would. When the final class arrived, Ryan suddenly came over to me after the bell. His usual contemptuous attitude was nowhere to be seen. He smiled at me. "Ethan, tomorrow is my birthday. Dad has already reserved a banquet hall at the Grand Palace Hotel. You have to come tomorrow night." So this was what he had been waiting for. In my previous life, Richard had reserved the finest hotel in South City for Ryan to hold his birthday banquet. Back then, Ryan had behaved unusually and invited me to attend. I had been overjoyed, thinking I would finally be acknowledged in public. But I did not own a suit. Only a few worn-out outfits I had worn for years. While I was worrying about it, Ryan suddenly came to my room and gave me an expensive suit. He claimed it was a gift for me to make up for missing my birthday a few days earlier. Although I found it suspicious, I desperately wanted to appear before everyone and escape the days of being bullied. At Ryan's birthday banquet the following day, just as I was about to step onto the stage and take a family photo, Ryan suddenly looked heartbroken and accused me of stealing his suit. Only later did I learn that Ryan believed that as we grew older, my true identity would inevitably become known to outsiders. So when the largest crowd was present, he deliberately trampled my dignity into the ground. I took a deep breath, then suddenly smiled and answered firmly, "All right, I will be there on time tomorrow night." After receiving my definite answer, Ryan's smile grew even wider. "Then it is settled." "Oh, right." Ryan acted as though something had suddenly occurred to him. "You probably do not own a decent suit, do you?" I sneered inwardly. Damn, Ryan's crude methods, had not changed at all. I deliberately looked disappointed. "No, forget a suit. I do not even own a decent set of clothes." Ryan could barely suppress the smile on his face. "I own plenty of suits. I will bring one for you tomorrow." Ryan could not hide his smugness. After tomorrow, everyone in the world would know exactly what kind of thief Ethan Carter was. Then the scandal that happened today would quickly be forgotten. People might even believe that everything that happened today had been planned entirely by Ethan. After all, he was the kind of person who would even steal clothes. Seeing his triumphant expression, I suddenly felt like teasing him. "You are really kind enough to give me clothes." Ryan's expression froze. After a long moment, he answered somewhat unnaturally, "Everyone learned today that you are a Carter. I simply do not want you embarrassing the family." What a remarkable thing to say. It was as though Ryan were the Carter family's true heir, while I was merely some insignificant servant. I smiled and casually said, "Then thank you, my dear little brother." That evening, I had just finished dinner and returned to the dorm when Grace arrived. She stood in the doorway, frowning as she examined the room. "This is your dorm room. Why is there practically nothing here? It is still better than living in the Carter house." I answered honestly. Grace froze. The dormitory was indeed simple, but compared with the place I had lived in at the Carter home, that cramped storage room, it was undeniably much better. "Why are you here? Say what you need to say. I still have to study," I said impatiently, seeing my attitude. Grace instinctively felt uncomfortable, but when she remembered how much she had wronged me all these years, She decided not to speak indirectly and went straight to the point. Ethan, did Ryan really bully you at school? I raised an eyebrow. Is Miss Carter worried about me? Grace frowned. I am your eldest sister. Stop calling me Miss Carter every other sentence. I sneered. Were you not the one who said you did not have a brother like me, and ordered me never to call you my sister again? I did not invite her inside, and simply leaned back against the couch, looking at me, who was completely different from before. Grace's delicate brows drew tightly together. Ethan, why did you suddenly change? In the end, Grace finally asked the question. Changed. I finally looked at her. How have I changed? Because I no longer behave as I did before, letting Ryan frame and bully me, while allowing all of you to slander and humiliate me. Grace was once again left speechless. After a long silence, Grace asked again, Ethan, Ryan really has been bullying you at school, has he not? Mom said they watched the surveillance footage, but Ryan claimed you bribed the police. I sneered. I have no money or influence, and I cannot even afford enough food. What does Miss Carter think I could possibly use to bribe the police? As I spoke, I suddenly removed my shirt, revealing the horrifying scars covering my body. Grace sucked in a sharp breath and instinctively raised a hand to cover her mouth before she cried out. How could this be? I walked closer to Grace and stared directly into her eyes. Then I said each word clearly. Grace, this is the last time I will ever call you my sister. Look carefully and tell me what all these marks on my body are. Ever since the Carter family adopted Ryan, he has left these scars on me one by one. Grace's eyes were already filled with tears. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. How could this be? How could Ethan have so many scars on his body? The wounds varied greatly in age, some large and some small, packed densely together. They covered nearly every part of my body. She raised her head and looked at me in disbelief. Why did you never tell me? Whether or not Ryan caused these injuries, how had I endured so many injuries? My smile grew even colder. Did I never tell any of you? How many times had I told you since I was little? But did any of you ever believe me? But Ryan said you got those injuries fighting other students at school. Fighting whom? I cut her off directly. Who have I ever fought at school? Had any of you bothered to investigate at school, you would have discovered the truth easily. But did any of you ever investigate? You only ever believed Ryan. All that manipulative liar had to do was pretend to be pitiful. And you believed every word he said. None of you ever took me seriously, see, or held me in your hearts. You never once treated me like family. By the end, I was practically roaring. I had already told myself countless times that they were not worth it and that I wanted none of their so-called familial love. But they were still my biological parents and my biological sisters. When I truly faced them, I still could not suppress my anger and pain. Grace stared at me in a daze. She had genuinely never considered any of this before. Ryan had always been in poor health, and every time he became sick or was hospitalized, they blamed Ethan. They had indeed been deeply prejudiced against me. They had always believed that Ethan was an uncontrollable and disobedient wild child. They had never considered that I might have been falsely accused. Tears filled Grace's eyes and streamed uncontrollably down her face. I am sorry, Ethan. I am so sorry. It was our negligence that made you suffer like this. Hearing those words, my eyes could not help turning red. I had imagined hearing that apology countless times in this life. I had waited far too long. So long that my heart had completely died. Grace suddenly remembered something. She grabbed my hand. Ethan, you suffered so many injuries. Where did you get the money to go to the hospital? Ever since they adopted Ryan, they had stopped giving me any allowance. Going to a hospital cost money. And I had so many injuries. That treatment alone would have cost a fortune, although that amount meant little to them. For someone who had no financial support from his family, it would have been an enormous expense. I gradually calmed myself, then indifferently shook off her hand. I picked up my shirt from the floor and put it on. What hospital? How could I afford to go to a hospital? I simply bandaged the injuries myself. I was telling the truth. Hospital treatment was expensive. When the bullying first began, I still had enough money to get my wounds treated. But after that money ran out, I could only bandage them carelessly myself. That was also why all those wounds had left scars. As for the places on my back that I could not reach, I could only wrap a strip of cloth around them as best I could. When she heard this, Grace's tears fell even harder. My God, how could this have happened? He bandaged himself. He had no medicine and no clean medical supplies. So how could he properly treat his wounds? He had said the bullying began after they adopted Ryan, which meant that even as a child, when he was only 8 or 9 years old, an age when many boys still acted spoiled in their mother's arms, he had already been forced to bandage those countless wounds by himself. Grace could not imagine how I must have felt while being bullied, when no one in my family believed me, and I used my tiny hands to dress my own wounds. How heartbroken and hopeless must I have been? Grace sobbed uncontrollably. Her heart hurt as though an invisible hand were crushing it. She could only clutch her chest and repeat again and again, Ethan, I am sorry. I am sorry. I am so sorry. I returned to the couch and took a drink of water to soothe my throat, completely ignoring Grace's tears and apologies. There had once been a time when I never dared dream of hearing those words, but now I no longer needed them. Belated affection was worth less than weeds, and apologies were no different. I said calmly, Miss Carter, you have finished asking your questions, have you not? Unless there is something else, please stop disturbing me. Grace froze. Miss Carter, I no longer acknowledged her as my sister. Grace choked out, Ethan. She still wanted to say something, but I had no desire to waste any more time. I stood up and slammed the door shut. Grace recoiled in fright, barely avoiding having her nose struck by the door. She pounded on it. Ethan had suffered so much, and she wanted to speak with him and comfort him. I said impatiently, stop forcing me to call security. Grace's hand froze against the door. Do you really hate seeing me that much? I am your eldest sister. But the only response she received was silence. I had already taken out my books, and thrown myself into studying. I possessed the memories of my previous life, and my mind was already mature. My ability to understand different subjects was far beyond that of an ordinary 16-year-old, which made studying much easier. Besides, all of this material was something I had already learned once in my previous life. Now, I only needed to review what I had forgotten. Grace had no other choice, and could only turn around and leave. The moment Grace returned home, she saw Ryan crying in front of the entire family. His eyes were red, and his head was slightly lowered. He said with a deeply apologetic expression, I am sorry, Dad, Mom, Sophia, Olivia, this is all my fault. I was simply too afraid of losing all of you, so I spoke recklessly at school. I did not mean it. I truly did not mean it. Richard's expression remained cold, as he tried not to look at Ryan's aggrieved face. Ryan, I know you feel insecure, but Ethan is my son. That is a fact no one can change. You cannot join outsiders in bullying him at school. What do you think that does to the Carter family's reputation? Hearing the slight reproach in his voice, everyone instinctively wanted to speak and plead on Ryan's behalf. But then they remembered the live stream they had watched today, and the expression Ryan wore when he called Ethan an extortionist and a penniless loser. So everyone fell silent again. Grace stood around the corner from the doorway, an indescribable coldness in her eyes. The horrifying scars covering Ethan's body were still vivid in her mind. She did not immediately rush forward to accuse Ryan. She wanted to see what excuse he would make this time. Ryan secretly clenched his fists. Dad had actually scolded him because of Ethan. It was all that bastard Ethan's fault. Ryan suppressed the rage inside him, and the tears brimming in his eyes instantly fell. With a thud, Ryan dropped straight to his knees. Dad, I was wrong. Everything was my fault. I should not have been afraid of losing all of you. I will leave right now. You can bring Ethan back home. As long as I am gone, Ethan will surely return. As he spoke, Ryan stood up and headed directly for the door. But, after taking only 2 steps, he suddenly clutched his chest and curled up in pain, his entire body folding inward. The sight terrified everyone. Grace's fists tightened, and she nearly rushed forward to help him. But then she remembered the wounds covering Ethan's body and forced herself to remain still. The other members of the Carter family could not restrain themselves. Richard immediately forgot about reprimanding Ryan and rushed over in a single stride, catching him before he fell. Richard panicked, and the entire Carter family descended into chaos. None of them had any attention left to spare for Ethan. They all crowded anxiously around Ryan. "Ryan, do not frighten Mom. No one said you had to leave." Tears instantly welled in Claire's eyes. "Ryan, please, do not get worked up. Ethan deliberately provoked you first, and that was why you said the wrong things. Do not worry. None of us blame you anymore." Olivia rubbed Ryan's back and spoke anxiously. Hearing her words, the others did not entirely agree, but no one spoke up to object. Richard hurriedly shouted, "Take him to the hospital." The moment he heard this, Ryan quickly pressed down on Richard's hand. He shook his head with difficulty. "I do not want to go to the hospital." Richard no longer cared about anything else. He softened his voice and gently comforted Ryan. Ryan raised his tearful face and pleaded, "Dad, I do not want to go to the hospital. Hospitals are so cold. I do not want to go. I will be fine after sleeping for a while." Tomorrow was his birthday banquet. How could he go to the hospital now? What if those incompetent doctors made him stay there? Seeing Ryan like this, Claire's heart had already broken for him. After all, he was a child she had loved for so many years. Even if he had made a mistake, how could she truly bear to blame him? She pulled Ryan into her arms, speaking with a tenderness Ethan had never dared dream of receiving. "Do not be afraid, Ryan. We will all stay by your side." Ryan buried his face in Claire's embrace, and the corners of his mouth slowly curled into a smile. The Carter family were all half kneeling in front of him, so none of them could see that smile. But from where Grace was standing, she could see it clearly. Grace sucked in a sharp breath and hurriedly covered her mouth to keep herself from crying out. The smile on Ryan's face was smug and sinister. There was not the slightest trace of weakness left. His pain had been an act all along. Ryan stubbornly refused to go to the hospital, so the entire family had no choice but to coax him. Then he claimed he was tired and wanted to sleep. Only after watching Ryan fall asleep did the Carter family leave his room. "Grace, why did you only just get home? Where did you go?" Olivia asked. Something so serious had happened to Ryan at school, so every member of the Carter family had rushed home regardless of how busy they were. Grace had always done the same in the past, but today she was behaving strangely. Grace turned toward them. "I went to see Ethan." The moment she said this, everyone froze. Everyone froze. "Why did you go to see him again? What is there to see?" Olivia muttered with a displeased expression. Grace had already gone to see him during the day, so Olivia could not understand why she had visited Ethan again that evening. Sophia came downstairs and asked worriedly, "How is Ethan? Is he getting used to living at school?" Richard and Claire silently sat down on the couch. The atmosphere in the living room became oppressive. Their feelings toward Ethan were complicated. They felt guilty, but still could not rid themselves of the dislike built up over so many years. When Grace remembered the scars covering Ethan's body, tears once again filled her eyes. Seeing her like this, Claire immediately panicked. "What happened? Is Ethan having a difficult time at school?" After taking a long time to compose herself, Grace said, "His entire body is covered in countless wounds." The moment she said this, everyone was shocked. "He really has injuries on his body?" Claire asked in surprise. But Ryan said Ethan had bribed the police. Deep down, every member of the Carter family had believed him. After all, considering everything Ethan had supposedly done in the past, hearing their doubtful words, the tears in Grace's eyes finally spilled down her cheeks. She finally understood why Ethan would rather live at school than stay in this house, in this family. No one was willing to believe him, even though his body was already covered in scars, and even though he had suffered so much since childhood. No one was willing to believe him. As long as Ryan claimed Ethan was bad, every member of the Carter family would immediately assume that he truly was bad. At that moment, Grace finally understood Ethan's despair. The despair of giving everything he had, only for no one to believe him. Grace could not imagine how he had endured all these years. He had been so young. No wonder he had become so timid and submissive. He had suffered so many injuries, yet none of them had known anything about them, because he had not dared tell them. He had feared even greater misunderstandings and scolding. Sophia began to panic as well. Grace was the calmest and strongest of the three sisters. It had been an extremely long time since any of them had seen her cry. Does Ethan dislike living at school? Sophia asked worriedly. When Olivia heard this, she could not help rolling her eyes. Key was the one who insisted on living at school. Now, he suddenly does not want to stay there anymore. Does he think we are that easy to manipulate? Hearing those words, Grace's gaze suddenly turned cold. She frowned at Olivia. Ethan is a member of our family. He is our younger brother, and the son Mom carried for 10 months and gave birth to. If he wants to return to his own home, why should he need anyone else's permission? Olivia froze. They had said similar things before, so she did not understand why Grace was reacting so strongly this time. Olivia pursed her lips. Dissatisfied with Grace's stern tone, she could not help muttering under her breath, I do not have a brother like him. Even Richard was startled by Grace's sudden burst of anger. Olivia clutched her instantly reddened cheek and stared at Grace in disbelief. Tears quickly filled her eyes. Grace, you hit me. Grace looked at her youngest sister, without softening in the slightest. She said coldly, from now on, you are never allowed to say anything like that again. Why should I? Olivia shouted. Do you not know what kind of person Ethan is? If he were even half as good as Ryan, I would never refuse to acknowledge him. It has been so many years. Have you forgotten all the things he has done? Grace replied coldly. What makes you so sure he did those things? Do you have any evidence? Ryan saw them with his own eyes. What more evidence do you need? Olivia screamed hysterically. She could not believe that Grace had hit her because of that bastard Ethan. Ryan, whatever he says becomes the truth to all of you. Have you never once considered that Ryan might be lying? Impossible. Olivia rejected the idea without hesitation. Someone as kind as Ryan could never lie. Olivia looked at Grace in disappointment. What kind of spell did Ethan cast on you to make you defend him like this? In any case, if he wants to come back, I will be the first to object, Olivia declared firmly. Grace took a deep breath and said painfully, he does not want to come back. Why? Sophia could not help asking. Grace remained silent. She did not know how to explain it, because no matter what she said, every member of the Carter family would believe that Ethan must have some ulterior motive. Sophia grew anxious. Grace, you just said Ethan has many injuries. Is that really true? Grace nodded. It is true. Ethan took off his shirt and showed me. The scars were packed all over his body. They were horrifying. Ever since we adopted Ryan has been bringing people to beat him like that. It has already been 8 years. For 8 years, Ethan has lived under Ryan's bullying. Everyone sucked in a sharp breath when they heard this. Impossible. Olivia was the first to object. Richard could no longer remain seated either. Could there be some misunderstanding? How could Ryan have caused all those injuries? Claire could not help asking, could Ethan be mistaken? Ryan was only 8 years old, 8 years ago, Sophia said hesitantly. Ryan said Ethan bribed the police. He still refused to believe that Ryan could do something like this. She was more willing to believe that Ethan had bribed the police. Giles, which had caused Grace to misunderstand Ryan. Grace suddenly said, we stopped giving Ethan money when he was 8. He has not received anything from us since then. He also could not reveal his family background outside. He had neither power nor influence. What could he possibly have used to bribe the police? Hearing those words, everyone fell silent. Ibo, Kubo, and Eyes. Deep down, they desperately wanted to clear Ryan's name and believe Ethan had bribed the police to fabricate the evidence. That was why they had refused to think too deeply about these practical questions. Claire had always believed that the surveillance videos and photographs had been tampered with. She still refused to believe that Ryan could truly be capable of such things. But now, the truth had been laid bare before Claire, and she had no choice but to believe it. The thought of Ethan made her heart ache again. He had suffered so many injuries. Why had he never told them? Because, no matter what he said, none of us would ever believe him. All this time, we had only ever trusted Ryan unconditionally. Grace was overwhelmed with guilt. She had always been wise and composed in the business world. Yet, for some reason, she had been unbelievably blind when it came to her own family. I went to see his dormitory. There was practically nothing inside. It was not much different from that storage room, but the dormitory was larger, much larger than the storage room, At school, no one will scold him or falsely accuse him. I wanted him to come home, but he shut the door in my face. Grace continued haltingly. It was us. We are the ones who failed him. Before I came home, I deliberately went to the school and asked around. Ryan really has been bullying him all these years. Everyone wore complicated expressions and could no longer find any words to refute her. They desperately did not want to believe Ryan was that kind of person. But they all knew Grace's personality. She would never say something unless she was absolutely certain. Grace suddenly added, just now when Ryan claimed his chest hurt, I was standing at the door while Mom held him. I saw him smiling in Mom's arms. Claire cried out in shock and covered her mouth in disbelief. How is that possible? Richard frowned. Could you have seen it wrong? Grace answered firmly. I saw it clearly. He really was smiling. He looked extremely pleased with himself, and there was something sinister in that smile. Sinister was the most accurate word to describe his expression. The living room fell into deathly silence. Their emotions were far too complicated. After a long silence, Olivia suddenly cried, Have all of you forgotten? Ryan saved the lives of all three of us. Have you forgotten everything he did? The moment she said this, everyone fell silent again. The reason they had doted on Ryan since childhood was not merely because he was gentle and obedient. It was also because when Ryan was very young, he had used his small, frail body and risked his life to save each of them. Ryan had saved their lives. No matter what he had done, that undeniable fact would never change. Every one of them owed Ryan their life. It was because he had saved them that his health had become so weak. The next day, I opened my computer with practiced ease. As expected, the stock I had bought had skyrocketed. My money had multiplied dozens of times over. I glanced at the calendar. There were still 2 days left. In 2 days, the stock would crash, as long as I sold it before the plunge. I estimated I would earn at least $500,000. I had just closed the computer when someone knocked on the door. As promised, Ryan had come, bringing an exquisite suit with him. I opened the door and looked at the suit in Ryan's hands. The design and fabric were identical to the suit from my previous life. Ryan had abandoned his usual arrogant manner, and his face even carried a seemingly friendly smile. He held the suit out with both hands. Everything before was my fault. This suit may not be the newest design this year, but it was created by designer Vaughn. I am giving it to you as an apology. Designer Vaughn. I pretended not to understand. A trace of contempt appeared at the corner of Ryan's mouth. I could not believe you had never even heard of designer Vaughn. He quickly concealed the disdain in his eyes and explained gently, Designer Vaughn is one of the most famous designers in the country. It is extremely difficult to commission anything from him. Dad had this suit made for my birthday last year. It cost several $100,000. Look, his design number is embroidered right here. I have only worn it once, and I could never bear to wear it again. Ryan could not hide the smugness in his voice. A single outfit of his was worth several $100,000. As for Ethan, he was wearing his school uniform, and his wardrobe was nearly empty, with only a few faded, worn-out outfits hanging inside. How could Ethan possibly compare with him? A smile appeared at the corner of my mouth. I reached out and accepted the suit, then carefully examined the number embroidered into the corner. Of course I had heard of designer Vaughn. I knew that every time he designed an outfit, he used a special method to embroider a unique number into one corner, to prevent counterfeiting. Every outfit he made was one of a kind. I pretended to be delighted. So, this is one of the legendary outfits designed by designer Vaughn. Seeing my expression made Ryan's smile grow even broader. As long as you like it, I can finally relax. After placing the suit in my hands, Ryan still reminded me carefully, You will look wonderful in this. Be sure to wear it tonight. When you attend my birthday banquet, you are already 16. It is time for you to meet some people from high society. I nodded, and Ryan left with complete confidence. Before leaving, he deliberately gave me an invitation, as though afraid I might not be allowed inside. The instant Ryan turned away, a chilling coldness erupted in my eyes. Night gradually fell. After finishing my schoolwork for the day, I changed into the suit Ryan had brought. and headed toward the Grand Palace Hotel. The hotel was not particularly far from the school. My investment gains had not yet been converted into cash, so I was still completely broke, using the little money I had left. I boarded a city bus. The moment I stepped aboard, everyone turned to stare at me. The expensive suit I wore looked completely out of place in those surroundings. I ignored the strange looks around me, found an empty seat, and closed my eyes to rest. Unless something unexpected happened, there would be quite a show later. I needed to conserve my energy. The bus eventually reached my stop, not far from the Grand Palace Hotel. I had only taken a few steps after getting off when Grace's voice suddenly came from behind me. I turned around and silently cursed my terrible luck. I had already run into the Carter family here. Other than Ryan, every member of the family was standing behind me. They all stared at me in surprise. "Are you here to attend Ryan's birthday banquet?" Grace was the first to ask. I answered indifferently, yes. Everyone looked at the invitation in my hand and exchanged astonished glances. In previous years, Ethan had always refused to attend Ryan's birthday banquet, and Ryan had never wanted Ethan there. So why had Ethan come this year? And why did he have an invitation? Did Ryan give you that invitation? Grace asked again. Sophia glanced at the bus pulling away and asked in surprise, "Did you come here by bus?" I glanced indifferently at her and nodded once more. Everyone fell silent. Every one of them owned a private car. Even Ryan, who was still a minor, owned his own sports car. Yet I, a rightful heir of the wealthy Carter family, had arrived by public bus. Richard looked at the suit I was wearing with a complicated expression. He had personally commissioned that suit from designer Vaughn last year. After asking the designer for a special favor, it had been Ryan's 15th birthday present. Ryan had loved it dearly and had barely been willing to wear it himself. Yet surprisingly, it suited Ethan quite well. Ryan must have given it to Ethan as an apology. The fact that Ryan was willing to give Ethan this suit proved that he had begun to regret his actions. They should give Ryan another chance to start over. Claire wanted to step forward and say something to me, but I had already entered the hotel without looking back. Richard said, "Let us go inside too." Claire spoke slowly, although she did not want to believe that Ryan had bullied Ethan for 8 years. She still felt deeply guilty toward me. When we entered the banquet hall, many guests had already arrived. The moment the Carter family appeared, they became the center of attention. 3 days ago, on my birthday, I had only asked for a birthday cake. The entire family had mocked and berated me. Yet 3 days later, for the birthday of Ryan, their adopted son, they had reserved the finest hotel in South City and invited every prominent figure to celebrate with him. Anyone who did not know the truth might have thought Ryan was the Carter family's biological son, while I was the child they had picked up from the street. At the prearranged time, Ryan appeared amid the host's exaggerated announcement. He was dressed in an expensive custom-made suit and entered the banquet hall like a prince, under the attention of every guest. The moment he entered, Ryan impatiently scanned the entire hall. When he spotted me sitting alone in a corner, his eyes lit up and he finally relaxed. Ryan sneered inwardly. Did Ethan really think he could steal the spotlight at my birthday banquet and have Mom and Dad introduce him to all these members of high society? Impossible. Ryan headed directly toward me. He could no longer wait. After everything that happened yesterday, Ryan could clearly sense that everyone was looking at him differently. He hated those looks. He would not allow anyone at his own birthday banquet to stare at him that way. He had to turn the situation around. When everyone saw the direction Ryan was walking, surprise flashed through their eyes. As their gazes followed him, they immediately spotted me sitting alone in a corner, eating, while looking at my phone. The moment they saw my refined face, they remembered the live stream from yesterday. After the live stream ended, the footage had quickly spread throughout the entire elite social circle. It could be said that most members of high society had already watched the video last night. Everyone immediately began whispering among themselves, "Do you see him? That is the true heir of the Carter family." Did you not watch the video from Ethan's school yesterday? No, I was too busy yesterday. How would I have had time to watch some video? I always thought Ryan was the Carter family's only son. I never imagined he was adopted. Do you see that boy sitting in the corner? That is Ethan, the true Carter heir. No way. I knew something seemed strange. I remember the Carter heir was not called Ryan before. This is truly bizarre. Why would the Carter family make their real son sit alone in that corner? Their voices were quiet, but so many people were discussing it that Ryan could not avoid hearing them. He secretly clenched his fists. He knew these people would gossip. He had to reverse the situation immediately. He would never allow anyone at his birthday banquet to humiliate him. Seeing that things were turning bad, the Carter family hurried over to Ryan. Claire quickly comforted him. Ryan, ignore their nonsense. Today is your birthday banquet. You are the only person who matters tonight. If Ryan became so angry that he fell ill, his entire birthday banquet would be ruined. Richard also hurriedly said, Ryan, do not think about anything today. Just enjoy being the guest of honor. Grace was the only member of the family who did not rush to comfort Ryan. Instead, she walked toward me. Ryan stared at Grace's retreating back, and hatred flashed through his eyes. He forced a smile and said to everyone, Dad, Mom, Sophia, Olivia, I am fine. I simply have a few questions for Ethan. Following his gaze, the Carter family also noticed me sitting in the corner. For some inexplicable reason, the Carter family suddenly had a very bad feeling. They instinctively wanted to stop Ryan, but he had already strode forward without allowing anyone to object. Grace reached me first. When I saw someone approaching, I could only turn off my phone, and the stock market screen disappeared with it. Grace hurried over to me and immediately asked, Ethan, where did you get that suit? I raised an eyebrow. Would you believe me if I said Ryan gave it to me? I expected Grace to mock me again, but unexpectedly, she nodded without hesitation. Grace stepped sideways to block everyone's view. Then she continued asking, when Ryan gave you the suit, was anyone else present? I looked at her suspiciously. What do you mean? Could she actually suspect that Ryan might do something underhanded? Had Ryan not always been completely perfect in their eyes? I simply did not answer her question. Grace grew anxious. Hurry up and tell me. She looked me over from head to toe and saw that the suit was the only valuable thing I wore. It was also the only thing connected to Ryan. The moment Ryan entered the banquet hall, he had headed directly toward Ethan. That was completely unlike his usual behavior. Ryan had never even allowed Ethan to attend his birthday banquets before. So why would he voluntarily approach him this time and draw everyone's attention to Ethan? She instinctively felt that something terrible was about to happen. That was why she had hurried over to Ethan first. I raised an eyebrow and knowingly asked, why are you so anxious, Miss Carter? Now, Grace gritted her teeth, not knowing how to answer me. She could only turn around and walk toward Ryan. Grace called out to him as he strode forward. Let us go over there. There are still many guests waiting to speak with you. Grace grabbed Ryan's hand, trying to lead him away. She instinctively did not want Ryan confronting Ethan. Ethan had already suffered at Ryan's hands for 8 years. Ever since she saw Ryan smiling in their mother's arms yesterday, something inside Grace had changed. Ryan subtly pulled his hand free from Grace's grasp. His smile remained gentle and warm, just like the refined young gentleman he had always pretended to be. Grace, I only want to speak with Ethan. There is no need to be nervous. After saying this, Ryan quickened his pace toward me. I watched his impatient behavior with amusement. He was still only a 16-year-old boy. His anxious eagerness to succeed lacked the composure he possessed at 24 in my previous life. Ryan was fairly tall. At 16, he was already taller than Grace. Grace was wearing high heels, yet she still could not catch up with him. The rest of the Carter family followed behind Ryan, marching toward me in a large group. The spectacular scene instantly attracted the attention of the entire banquet hall. Ryan stopped in front of me, in today, and once again put on his harmless expression. He asked innocently, Ethan, a suit has disappeared from my closet. It was the suit Dad commissioned for my birthday last year. From designer Vaughn. I treasured it so much that I could never bear to wear it. Hearing this, everyone immediately sensed that something was wrong. In yesterday's video, the camera had accidentally captured my shoes. I had been wearing my school uniform, and although my shoes were clean, they were already extremely old. Had Grace not personally confirmed my identity, no one would have believed that someone dressed so poorly could be a Carter heir. The suit I was wearing now was obviously extremely expensive. If I had to wear shoes that old, How could I possibly afford such a costly suit? Ryan looked at the clothes I was wearing and pretended to be confused. Ethan, the suit you are wearing looks almost identical to the one I lost. The moment he said this, the surrounding crowd erupted. Ryan's suit had disappeared, only to appear on Ethan's body. What exactly was going on? Everyone only needed to think about it to understand. Richard and Claire exchanged bewildered looks. What was happening? They had assumed Ryan had given the suit to Ethan. They never expected that it had actually been stolen. But Ethan was already living at school and had not returned home for several days. When could he possibly have taken the suit? Lost in thought, they failed to realize that based solely on one statement from Ryan. They had already believed him unconditionally. Ryan's words had convinced them that I stole the suit. This was also why, no matter what happened, I was unwilling to tell them anything. Ryan seemed to have cast a spell over them, no matter what he said. The moment Ryan opened his mouth, they believed him unconditionally. But this time, Grace was no longer as blindly trusting as before, although she had no evidence either. This time, she was certain Ethan would never do such a thing. Everyone already knew Ethan's true identity, so there was no need for him to use such a clumsy excuse to appear before everyone. Besides, ever since he entered the banquet hall, he had been sitting quietly in a corner, with no intention of showing off or stealing Ryan's spotlight. The guests in the banquet hall immediately began whispering. They are exactly identical. Could the suit Ethan is wearing really have been stolen from Ryan? Everyone knows that every outfit designed by designer Vaughn is one of a kind. There could never be another identical suit. Surely not. He is the Carter family's true heir. Would he really do something like that? He may not know this. Although he is the Carter family's biological son, they do not value him at all. How could that be? Is he not their biological son? Why would they neglect their own child and favor an adopted son instead? Otherwise, why had none of us ever heard of this young master? The Carter family must have hidden him away. Who knows what they were thinking? Surely their biological son should matter more than an adopted child. But he actually stole someone else's clothes. That proves his character is terrible. Perhaps that is exactly why the Carter family kept him hidden. That is true. Stealing clothes is far too disgraceful. Listening to the increasingly loud discussion, I looked at Ryan with amusement. Then, under everyone's gaze, I asked him directly, "Are you saying that I stole the suit I am wearing?" Ryan and the Carter family all frowned. Ryan had only said the suits looked identical. He had never directly accused me of stealing it. He could still claim I was wearing a counterfeit and settle the matter with an apology. But if it was officially defined as theft, the nature of the situation would be completely different. This suit was worth several $100,000. If the matter became serious, and Ethan was convicted of theft, he could be sentenced to prison. Ryan quickly reacted. He suppressed his excitement and tried to hide the smile tugging at his lips. Then he pretended to be hurt and troubled. "Ethan, I kindly invited you to my birthday banquet. How could you do this? If you did not have a suit, you could have told Mom and Dad, and they would have bought you one. I know you have always liked taking my things. As for this suit, I already wore it at my birthday last year, so I would not have minded giving it to you." In only a few sentences, Ryan had implied a great deal. Ethan always liked stealing his possessions, and Ethan had stolen a suit Ryan wore last year. Whether I truly liked taking Ryan's belongings, the guests could not know, but formal suits were generally only worn once. For a rightful heir of the Carter family, to steal a suit someone else had already worn was far too humiliating. The direction of the discussion instantly changed. No wonder the Carter family kept him hidden. If I had such a disgraceful descendant, I would not want to take him anywhere either. Exactly. Everyone had already subconsciously decided that Ethan was the thief. If someone spoke up for him now, it would inevitably embarrass Ryan. Grace could no longer watch in silence. She hurriedly stepped in front of me and said anxiously, "Ryan, there must be some misunderstanding. Ethan is not someone who would steal. Think carefully. Could you have given this suit to Ethan yourself?" By the end, Grace's voice was almost pleading. As long as Ryan admitted he remembered incorrectly and said it was all a misunderstanding, neither of them would suffer any consequences. The Carter family and Ryan stared at Grace in disbelief. What was wrong with her? How could she defend Ethan on an occasion like this if Ryan admitted that he remembered incorrectly? Everyone would inevitably think he was petty and calculating, combined with what happened yesterday. How could Ryan continue moving within elite social circles? I was also surprised. She had defended me once again, but my eyes quickly returned to calm. I did not need her help. Ryan quickly composed himself. He took a deep breath and stared fixedly into Grace's eyes, as though silently questioning her. Grace, why are you no longer taking my side? Do you not love me anymore? Grace tried not to meet his gaze. Ryan was also the brother she had loved for 8 years, and he had once saved her life. Grace instinctively did not want to see him hurt. But Ethan was also her brother, especially after learning how much suffering I had endured over the years. Grace had finally awakened to the truth. She had protected me far too little, seeing her avoid his gaze. Ryan looked deeply wounded. He stopped looking at Grace and said directly, Grace, this suit was a gift Dad put tremendous effort into obtaining for me. How could I betray Dad's sincerity by giving it away? Besides, even if I wanted to give Ethan something, I would have given him a brand new suit. I would never give him one I had already worn. I checked my closet only yesterday, and this suit was still hanging there, yet now it has appeared on his body. Ryan did not finish his sentence, but everyone understood what he meant. Despair filled Grace's eyes. He looked pleadingly toward Richard and Claire, who had remained silent the entire time. Claire opened her mouth, but ultimately turned her face away without saying anything. Richard frowned. After hesitating briefly, he tried to speak. Ethan, if you did not have a suit, you could have told Dad. You are still my son. Why did you have to? I laughed mockingly. Only 3 days ago, they had pretended to visit me and bring me gifts. Yet barely any time had passed before they revealed their true faces again. Grace was devastated. She stared at Richard in disbelief. By speaking that way, he had already decided that Ethan stole the suit. The people surrounding them were the most prominent members of high society. By doing this, he had publicly labeled Ethan a thief. How could Ethan possibly establish himself in this social circle afterward? Claire's eyes also reddened. She opened her mouth as though she wanted to speak, but eventually turned her face away. Ethan was her biological son, as long as it did not affect Ryan. She also wanted him to live well, but unfortunately, although Ryan was adopted ever since he came to the Carter family, Claire had clearly become much happier. Ryan was obedient, thoughtful, and considerate toward her. Whenever he spoke, he always knew how to fill her heart with warmth. Compared with him, Ethan fell far short. She disliked the shabby air surrounding Ethan and could not stand his timid, submissive behavior. Ethan would never accomplish anything important. The only person she could rely on in the future was Ryan. Whenever Ethan and Ryan stood against each other, she would choose Ryan without hesitation, just as she had when she learned Ethan was being bullied. I stopped looking at Richard and stepped out from behind Grace. I looked directly at Ryan and asked him again, Ryan, are you certain I stole this suit? Ryan felt strangely uneasy beneath my gaze, but the situation had already reached this point, and there was no opportunity for him to back down. Ryan continued sorrowfully, Ethan, I do not know how you obtained this suit. Dad personally begged designer Vaughn to make it, and I loved it so much that I could never bear to part with it. If you take it off and return it now, I will not pursue the matter. After all, we are still brothers. Ryan remained as gentle and refined as ever, like a generous young gentleman from a wealthy family. I suddenly gave him a wicked smile and answered cheerfully, all right, since you want it, I will take it off and give it to you. As I spoke, I actually began removing the suit in front of everyone. The Carter family and Ryan were all stunned. Ryan merely wanted to humiliate me, and he still had a whole speech prepared. Who would take off his suit at an event like this? Would that not make him a laughingstock? Grace instinctively tried to stop me, but I moved too quickly. After I removed the suit, the faded t-shirt underneath was completely exposed. The Carter family's faces darkened at the sight. The surrounding guests began talking even more loudly. Ryan's expression froze for a moment, before quickly returning to normal. He secretly sneered. I had, actually, exposed such shabby clothing at an occasion like this. I had utterly humiliated the Carter family. Now they would surely despise me even more, and Ryan's position in the family would become even more secure. The impact of yesterday's incident would also be buried. Ryan reached out to take the suit, but my hand suddenly stopped. I looked at the smugness he could no longer conceal. Ryan immediately asked, "What, you do not want to return it?" It was as though he had suddenly caught me red-handed, and his eyes lit up. He immediately cut me off, eager to watch me make an even greater fool of myself. The more the Carter family hated Ethan, the more deeply they would love Ryan. "Why are you in such a hurry?" I interrupted him without restraint. I stood there openly, wearing only my faded old clothes. Although my figure was thin, I stood before everyone in their luxurious attire, without losing the slightest bit of presence. I looked mockingly at Richard. "Mr. Carter, you just said that if I did not own a suit, I could tell you, and you would buy one for me." Richard instinctively disliked the way I addressed him. But when he saw my expression, he suddenly felt that something unpleasant was about to happen. Before Richard could speak, I spread my arms, displaying my faded shirt, which had long since become too short for me. "Mr. Carter, would all of you like to take a look at my clothes? I wonder whether you still remember them. You bought this shirt for Ryan 2 years ago. It was too large for him, so he passed it down to me. These past few years, I have only had 2 sets of clothes to wear. Forget owning a suit. I do not even have a single decent, properly fitting outfit. How would I ever dare ask you to buy me formal wear?" Olivia was the first who could no longer tolerate it. She snapped, "Ethan, why are you bringing up such a trivial matter here? Are you deliberately trying to ruin the Carter family's reputation?" "A trivial matter." I turned toward her. "Then what does Miss Olivia Carter consider a serious matter? Ryan falsely accusing me of theft, all of you oppressing me for so many years, and now trying to destroy my entire future. Are all of those trivial matters to you? In my previous life, whenever they mentioned the Carter family's reputation and dignity, I would choose to endure everything. Back then, I still believed I was part of the Carter family, and felt honored to sacrifice myself for them. Looking back now, my former self had been unbelievably foolish. I had humiliated myself endlessly just to accommodate others. But after receiving a second chance at life, I would never tolerate it again, not even if I were a dog. The Carter family could sacrifice my life for the sake of their so-called reputation. So why should I sacrifice anything for them? The situation about to spiral out of control, Ryan became anxious. "Ethan, Mom and Dad raised you all these years. Is this how you repay them? They are your parents. You are utterly ungrateful." He no longer bothered pretending to be a refined gentleman, and returned directly to his old methods, using morality to manipulate me. I immediately fired back at Ryan. "You truly have no shame. At least I am the Carter family's biological son. They had a legal duty to support me. You are an adopted son who has lived here for free. Yet you still used such vicious methods to destroy me and utterly humiliate the Carter family. Is that what you call being a devoted son? Furthermore, ever since the Carter family adopted you, they have never given me another cent. I survived by working part-time to support myself. Not only that, I also endured 8 years of bullying from you. Yet you are shameless enough to stand here lecturing me about gratitude. What right do you have?" I unleashed everything I had. Tearing into Ryan, I turned my anger toward Richard and the others. "And all of you. 3 days ago, it was my birthday, and I only wanted a cake. Yet every one of you berated me. How much could a single cake possibly cost? Throughout my entire childhood, you could not even bear to buy me a cake worth a few $100s. Yet now you stand here pretending that you would buy me a suit. Mr. Carter, when you say things like that, do you ever stop and consult your conscience? Ryan bullied me for 8 years. The countless scars covering my body were all caused by him. When I could no longer endure it and called the police, all you cared about was protecting Ryan. You even demanded that I not press charges against him. With such blatant favoritism, how dare you claim I am your son? Are you even worthy of being called a father?" After I unleashed that torrent of accusations, the entire banquet hall erupted. No one had expected that I would expose all these disgraceful secrets in front of the entire upper-class social circle. Every member of the Carter family trembled with rage. They stared at me in disbelief. Even Grace looked at me in shock. She had never imagined that I would reveal everything so directly. This did not merely humiliate me. It trampled the dignity of the entire Carter family underfoot. Every family had its scandals, but who would voluntarily reveal them to outsiders? As my words continued, Richard pointed a trembling finger at me. His entire body shook with fury, and he could not even form a sentence. But I had no intention of stopping. I took out my phone and connected it to the large screen. My clear voice echoed throughout the banquet hall. As for Ryan's accusation that I stole his suit, there is something I would like everyone to see. Once you watch it, you will naturally know whether I am truly a thief. Ryan instinctively sensed something was wrong. But before he could react, I had already pressed the play button. On the large screen, Ryan and I instantly appeared, although the footage was not especially clear. It was easy to recognize the entrance to the school dormitory. Ryan was holding a suit out with both hands. As the video continued playing, Ryan and the Carter family's faces grew increasingly pale. Ryan finally realized what was happening. He could no longer maintain his composure and completely abandoned his act. He screamed hysterically, "Turn it off. Turn it off now." The video was not very long. It contained only a few sentences. By the time Ryan finished shouting, it had already ended. The discussion in the banquet hall nearly blew the roof off. This time, the uproar was greater than ever before. Richard and Claire listened to the surrounding comments, then looked at me standing calmly to the side. They became so furious that they could not catch their breath. Their eyes rolled shut, and both of them fainted. I glanced at them, without the slightest intention of stepping forward to help. The suffocating sensation of being swallowed by seawater remained vivid in my mind. From that moment onward, in my heart. Richard and Claire had ceased to be my parents, and my three sisters were no longer my family. The three Carter sisters and Ryan frantically caught and supported them. Olivia could no longer control herself. She screamed hysterically, "Ethan, you made Mom and Dad faint from anger. Are you satisfied now? Do you have even the slightest conscience? What, do you mean I should simply accept being falsely accused and continue allowing all of you to bully me, while you casually brand me a thief, without even being allowed to fight back?" I cut her off directly. Olivia was left speechless by my response. She wanted to say I should endure it for the sake of the Carter family's reputation. But with so many people gathered around, she did not dare say it aloud. She was afraid everyone would turn against her. Richard and Claire were rushed to the hospital. The three Carter sisters hurriedly stayed by their parents' side. In the enormous banquet hall, Ryan was the only host left behind. Ryan panicked. He wanted to stay and enjoy his birthday banquet. He did not want the celebration to be ruined like this. He still had so many excuses prepared to clear his name. He did not want to leave. When the three Carter sisters reached the door, Grace suddenly turned back toward Ryan. "Are you not going to the hospital with Mom and Dad?" Ryan froze. Every guest in the hall turned to look at Ryan, who clearly had no intention of leaving. I casually added a sarcastic remark. He finally got the chance he had been waiting for to clear his name. And he has not succeeded yet. How could he bear to leave now? My words instantly pushed Ryan back into the center of controversy. Grace gave me a long, searching look, then turned and hurried after the others. Ryan glared at me hatefully and gritted his teeth. With no other choice, he reluctantly followed them out. The sound of cars starting echoed outside. They were gone. The guests and I stared awkwardly at one another. After a moment, I stood up. "Since everyone has finished eating, you should all head home." I rubbed my full stomach and was the first to walk out. The guests exchanged bewildered looks. This young Carter heir was rather interesting. Even after being treated so badly by his family, he remained calm. After fighting back, he could still maintain a relaxed attitude and even joke with them. His mental fortitude was truly extraordinary. After I left, the guests could only depart on their own. Ryan's 16th birthday banquet had been completely ruined by his own actions. Ryan had confronted me the moment he entered the hall. As a result, he had not even collected his birthday gifts or taken a single bite of cake. Instead, the entire upper-class social circle watched him become a complete laughingstock before the banquet ended. By comparison, my birthday, 3 days earlier, had at least included the cake Madison bought for me, with a beautiful girl beside me. My birthday had actually been quite enjoyable. I took out another $2 and rode the bus back to school. After returning to my dormitory, I opened my computer. As expected, both my phone and computer were flooded with reports about Ryan using clumsy schemes to frame the Carter family's true heir for theft, along with stories about Ryan bullying Ethan and the Carter family's outrageous favoritism toward their adopted son. Someone at the banquet had even recorded everything. The footage included the video I had played on the large screen. The internet was filled with furious criticism, all directed at Ryan and the Carter family. People online said they had never seen such an outrageous family. There were so many scandals that they did not know which one to discuss first. The reputation and dignity the Carter family valued most had been completely destroyed tonight. I glanced through the reports before closing them. Then I focused on reviewing my investments. The Carter family was powerful. They would not allow the scandal to continue spreading unchecked. That was the difference power made. If I wanted to bring down the Carter family, I first needed to strengthen myself. Only after gaining sufficient power could I deliver a fatal blow. Once I withdrew the money from this investment, I would need to begin working on something else. I had my eye on a small company. It was a promising business that would rise rapidly within the next 2 years. I checked the date. The company was currently on the verge of bankruptcy, and its owners were trying to sell it. There was still 1 week from now. Another company would acquire it. I had to earn enough money to buy it before that acquisition happened. Stock trading was not a guaranteed source of profit. My knowledge of the market was limited. I could not rely on stocks as the foundation of my fortune. The next morning, I opened my computer and discovered, in surprise, that Carter Corporation stock had plunged. I had not expected yesterday's spectacle to have such a major impact. I was in an excellent mood. After eating a filling breakfast, I went to class on time. The moment I entered the classroom, the entire room, as usual, instantly fell silent. Unsurprisingly, Ryan had not come to school. He had often taken leave after being hospitalized for illness before, but this time, it was his parents who had been hospitalized. Ryan had remained perfectly fine after such an enormous shock yesterday. I wondered whether someone supposedly as frail as him could explain that contradiction. Everyone was staring at me. They seemed unable to understand how I had changed so completely in only a few days. Last night, many of them had attended Ryan's birthday banquet and witnessed the entire spectacle themselves. In only one morning, every student in the classroom had already learned the full details of what happened last night. I was in a good mood today, so I waved at my classmates. Good morning, everyone. They apparently had not expected me to greet them. They mechanically replied, good morning. Their voices were unexpectedly synchronized. I nodded, like a leader inspecting his subordinates, and glanced around the classroom. Before walking to my seat, I began working through practice questions as usual. My classmates sensed that something was strange, but could not determine exactly what it was. Eventually, they reached a conclusion. Ethan had become much more shameless. I was no longer as easy to bully as before, but considering the Carter family's attitude toward me, no one wanted to go out of their way to flatter me either. Our new homeroom teacher was highly responsible and taught every lesson seriously. I listened with equal concentration. After all, studying hard was the only way to improve. After class, I spotted Madison outside the classroom window. He was peering into the room as though searching for someone. I walked out of the classroom and tapped her shoulder from behind, looking for me. Madison cried out in surprise. He turned around and glared at me with her almond-shaped eyes. You scared me. Her rare, adorably irritated expression made me burst out laughing. You are that easy to frighten. Madison's face reddened when I laughed at her. She quickly realized that I seemed to be teasing her. After we finished joking around, I asked, who were you looking around for? Me. My eyes lit up. Why were you looking for me? I wanted to see whether you were dead. Madison pouted and snapped irritably, Ethan, looking at her soft, rosy lips. For some inexplicable reason, I suddenly felt the urge to taste them. I shook my head and stopped my inappropriate thoughts. We were standing outside the classroom, and many students inside were still watching us. After hesitating for a moment, Madison finally revealed why she had come. "Were you all right last night?" Madison did not have any friends at school. The only person she regularly interacted with and had a favorable impression of was Ethan. Her family had received an invitation to Ryan's birthday banquet yesterday, but she disliked Ryan, so she had not attended. She never expected Ethan to go. She had gone to bed early and did not see the news until this morning, so she hurried over as soon as class ended. Ethan could probably be considered her friend. I waved my hand dismissively and answered honestly, "I am perfectly fine. Ryan is the one who should be having a difficult time." Madison studied me carefully. When she saw that nothing truly seemed wrong, she finally relaxed. Class was about to begin again. Madison smiled and said openly, "Let us have lunch together later." "Sure, I will come find you after class," I answered cheerfully. I liked Madison's cheerful and uninhibited personality. She was probably my only friend at this school. I waved goodbye to Madison and returned to my classroom once I stepped inside. I threw myself back into studying. Noon soon arrived. As promised, I went to Madison's classroom. Who is that boy? I have never heard of Madison having any friends. Could he be the legendary Ethan Carter? Yes, that is Ethan from the video. He is even more handsome in person. I did not recognize him at first. Madison is actually that close to him. Is she really not afraid Ryan will cause trouble for her? Ryan is only an adopted son. What is there to fear? Did the Carter family only learn today that he was adopted? Or something? Neither of us paid attention to their whispers, and we walked briskly toward the cafeteria. Madison admired the resilience I carried within me, especially after watching the video of me confronting the Carter family last night. She felt as though she had seen a reflection of herself. "You certainly know a lot for someone so young." "What do you mean, someone so young?" "You're about the same age as me." I gave an awkward laugh. Mentally, I was already 24. I was not truly an ordinary 16-year-old boy. In terms of mental age, I was a full 8 years older than Madison. These were simply lessons I had learned from experience. After we finished eating, my phone suddenly rang. It was Richard. He must have called the moment he woke up to settle accounts with me. After all these years, this was the first time Richard had ever called me. I answered the phone and immediately heard Richard's furious voice roaring through the receiver. "Where have you been? Why did you not answer your phone all morning?" I frowned slightly and replied indifferently, "I was in class this morning." My phone was turned off. My detached tone made Richard's anger lodge in his chest, and he nearly fainted again. After taking several deep breaths, Richard finally said, "Come home this afternoon." I acted as though I had not noticed his anger at all and calmly replied, "I have classes this afternoon." Richard became furious again. "You've already harmed Ryan this badly, and you still have the nerve to attend class. Do you know what everyone outside is saying about him now?" I sneered. "I harmed him. Who else could it be?" Richard flew into a rage. Had I been standing in front of him, he would have slapped me without hesitation. Even if Ryan had momentarily lost his judgment and made a mistake, I still should not have acted without regard for the consequences, and trampled Ryan and the Carter family's dignity underfoot. At his birthday banquet, I had completely disgraced the Carter family. I no longer felt like becoming angry. I had experienced this kind of treatment far too many times. I still replied evenly, "Then call the police." Richard could no longer contain his fury. His entire body began trembling. "You ungrateful son. You ungrateful son." Ryan's voice immediately came from the other end. "Dad, please calm down. I am fine now. I am truly fine. This was all my fault to begin with, but you must take care of your health." Ryan comforted Richard with reddened eyes, while holding back tears and helping him catch his breath. I had no interest in listening to their hypocritical performance, so I simply hung up. Madison asked worriedly, "Is everything all right?" I shook my head. "It is fine. Just ignore them." After lunch, I rested for a while and was about to begin class when the Carter family arrived. Ryan had brought every member of the family, and they stormed into the classroom aggressively. Before I even saw them, I heard Richard's furious roar. "Ethan Carter, get out here." His shout echoed throughout the entire school building. The Carter family's imposing procession had already drawn countless stares along the way, only because class was about to begin. Did no one come out to watch? Ms. Harper had already entered the classroom, and the sudden roar startled her as well. Before anyone could react, Richard had already charged into the classroom and marched directly toward me. Ryan was following behind him, along with Claire and the 3 Carter sisters. Grace had been trying to stop Richard the entire time, but Richard had no intention of letting me off. The aisles between the desks were not very wide, and with so many people crowded inside, the classroom instantly became cramped. The students seated around me quickly moved away to avoid being caught in the conflict. Richard raised his hand the moment he reached me, intending to slap me across the face. But I had already prepared myself. Without hesitation, I reached out and firmly seized his wrist. My eyes narrowed, and the aura around me instantly changed, carrying a dangerous edge. "You still want to hit me?" Richard and everyone else were stunned. I had actually dared treat Richard with such disrespect. Richard furiously tried to wrench, his hand free from my grip. But for some reason, my strength today was astonishingly great. Richard struggled several times, but failed to break free. I suddenly flung his hand aside. Richard lost his balance, staggered several steps, and nearly fell. Ryan quickly caught him. Then he pointed at me in disbelief and demanded, "Ethan, how dare you attack Dad? Shh, which one of your eyes saw me attack him?" I shot back without restraint. Seeing this, Olivia hurried to Richard's side as well. She snapped at me, "Ethan, do you have a death wish? How dare you commit such an outrageous act and shove Dad?" Before I could answer, Ms. Harper finally reacted. She hurried down from the podium and stood in front of me. "What are all of you doing?" Richard glanced at the woman before him, with contempt in his eyes. "I am disciplining my own son. Why are you interfering?" Ms. Harper refused to yield. "We are in the middle of class. Whatever matter you have can wait until class is over. Please do not disrupt classroom order." Richard became impatient. "Are you serious? He is my son. And right now, he is my student." Ms. Harper interrupted him directly. Richard was so furious he nearly exploded. Just as he was about to say something else, Principal Lee arrived after hearing the commotion. "Mr. Carter." When Richard saw Principal Lee, he hurriedly suppressed his anger. "No," and forced a smile. "Principal Lee, I see you are here." As he spoke, Richard reached out to shake his hand. Ryan was still attending this school and had already caused such a negative scandal. So Richard needed to maintain a good relationship with the principal. That way, Ryan's life at school would be a little easier. Having spent many years in the business world, Richard understood that principle well. Principal Lee did not refuse, and shook his hand. After all, Richard was a student's parent. He was not only Ryan's father, but Ethan's father as well. After greeting him, Richard said with a disappointed expression, "This ungrateful son of mine has caused your school endless trouble. I will take him home and discipline him properly." Richard reached out to drag me away, but Principal Lee subtly pulled me behind him. He smiled. "Your ungrateful son. Are you referring to Ryan?" What he did was indeed completely unacceptable. Both parents and teachers bear a certain degree of responsibility. But please rest assured, their former homeroom teacher has already been dismissed, and the newly appointed teacher is extremely responsible. We will do everything possible to properly educate your adopted son. When Principal Lee said, "adopted son," he deliberately emphasized the words, "divest." If Ryan's appearance had not been completely different from Richard's, the principal might have assumed that Ryan was Richard's illegitimate child. Otherwise, what normal person would ignore his perfectly good biological son and instead dote on an adopted child?